From Courtside the Virtual Hardwood, it's the NLSC podcast, episode number 392. Andrew with you once again. I am Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. My co-host is Derek. You know him in the forum as Deep3, and he is Deep384 on Twitter. Happy to be talking to you again, Derek. And yes, NBA 2K22 is out.
No, I'm happy to be here again. It's out, and I have it for the Xbox Series X and for the PC and the Xbox One, actually, because I bought the bundle when I purchased it on the Series X, and I actually think I did that accidentally, but I have it. And unfortunately, the first time that I tried to install the Xbox Series X version, I accidentally installed the Xbox One version on the Series X. So I was playing it, and I'm like, something's not right here. This doesn't have that saturated look. It doesn't look like next gen. And then, of course, I was playing the wrong version.
Where is my NBA? Where is the other next gen features?
And I'm looking at. I was like, this is wait. I see my league. This isn't right. No, I've spent a lot of time with the current gen version, so the PC version, and the next gen version, and I was kind of excited to give my thoughts on both on this show. I know that your first experience, we talked a little bit about it, and my first experience when we first booted up NBA 2K22 for current gen, for both of us on PC, we were not happy.
Not impressed. Not at all, no. And I'm still actually trying to troubleshoot an issue with the PC version. I am on Windows 7, which I know is past the end of its life cycle, and I need to upgrade to Windows 10. I know, especially with Windows 11 coming out. I have been sticking with 7 because, of course, I do a lot of content for older games, so it's handy to have the ability to easily fire up Live 2000, 2001, 2003, 2004. All of those, for people who don't know, use the old secure ROM, I think it is, or secure disk. It's copy protection from the early 2000s that didn't get updated over time, and there's concerns from Microsoft that it possibly has security risks, so they've taken it out of Windows 10. So if you try and run those old games, NBA Live 2001, 2000, 2003, and 2004, if you try to run those on Windows 10, it won't work because it's trying to run a driver that has been removed from the system. So that's why I haven't upgraded. Looking around on the Steam forums, it does seem that a lot of people are having this issue. It's the old downloading game updates stuck at 0% issue, and normally when that happens, you either delete sync bin or you check your security settings, make sure that the firewall antivirus isn't blocking anything, or that you have sufficient hard drive space to download the updates. Obviously, I eliminated all of those possibilities and deleted sync bin, tried everything. Actually went back to 2K20 and 2K21. It's currently doing the same thing. So there's something going on with the 2K server, it seems, that if you're on Windows 7 or 8.1, it's not downloading the updates. So I haven't really been able to play 2K22 properly yet. It let me into my team, and it seems to have everything there, but it doesn't show the actual pictures of the cards. It just has the cards that you supposedly have, but they don't have any pictures, any images on them, and you can't connect to Micro or anything like that. So I haven't really been able to sink my teeth into the game that much and check out all the modes. I have played some exhibition games and not that thrilled with what I played. But yeah, unfortunately, an issue that's going on and also affecting 2K21 and 2K20, Derek. And I actually have reported that issue to Leftos. I sent along my findings and that thread and some information will hopefully help, and he'll be looking into it for us, and hopefully it'll get resolved. But that's quite unfortunate. I mean, yes, I do need to upgrade to Windows 10, but that's also an oversight because those games do support 7 and 8.1 as well. So 2K really does need to fix that up.
Yeah, I know there was another issue, too, with PA announcers not working on. It was just the generic announcers on Xbox Series X, and then for a time on PlayStation 5. But then there were a lot of people, after it got patched in and fixed on PS5, it wasn't fixed on a lot of people's Series X. A couple people were reporting that on Twitter and whatnot. No, that is too bad. I will say that the game is getting killed on Steam right now. It's mostly negative. The only thumbs up reviews that I really saw were really quick things. You wonder who's going in and actually making those, but just good. That was one of them. Just good.
Oh, detail.
And then another one of the thumbs up was 2K22 is better than 2K21, and that was it. That was like the only part. Like there wasn't feedback, there wasn't anything in it. It was just
Wouldn't tell us
that's it.
how. It's just,
Right, but people are upset because not only because the version is not next gen for PC, that it's a current gen port, but that people aren't seeing an improvement from a gameplay perspective. If you look through those comments and what people are saying and whatnot on the thumbs down reviews, I'm going to go more in depth later on this podcast on the pros and cons of 2K22 for both current gen and next gen. I will say that my first experience when I booted up the Xbox One version, and while I already had it on, I was like, I'm going to jump into an exhibition game and try this out because the PC version, as you know, was late for me as far as being able to like pre-install. So I jumped in on the Xbox One version, and the skating and sliding was unbearable. All those player movement issues that drove me nuts on 2K21 that came over from the new motion system upgrade were still there, and my player was, looking like he was spazzing out while he was dribbling, and his body was moving all these weird ways. And I just don't understand how they think that that's like how humans move. The dribbling was 100 miles an hour. The defense was just moving out of the way for me again, where I could just like run by them and go for dunks. So I remember messaging you actually after I had played that for a little bit while I was waiting for the PC version to download. I said, you're going to be so disappointed. I was like, don't get too excited because you're going to be so disappointed. And unfortunately, that was the case when you booted it up. But I do have some pros to go over at some point with the PC version of 2K22. So yes, the current gen version, and for the next gen version to go along with some of these gripes.
I mean, I was incredibly disappointed in some respects. At the same time, I wasn't expecting it to be a huge jump. But at the same time, people are saying that those reviews you mentioned on Steam, obviously, saying that it's better than 2K21 and good, not really going into why. There's people on Twitter saying it as well, that it's better on last gen or current gen as well. I really don't feel that. I feel, if anything, it may even be worse. Admittedly, I haven't got all the updates through, and sometimes those updates do include tuning fixes and things like that, so I haven't got a proper look at the game yet, I will certainly admit that. But I'm bewildered, befuddled even, by that response, that positive response to current gen. Next gen is looking a lot better from what I've seen, and you've mentioned that that it is better than current gen. No surprise there, because that was the version that is the priority for 2K, naturally, no surprise. But I'm playing it, I couldn't finish a game, and it has been ages since I've not been able to finish that first game I played in a 2K game, win or lose, because
you said you couldn't get to the half, right?
I couldn't get to halftime. It was so frustrating. I mean, the whole improvements to defensive AI was clearly next gen only, because I'm defending on ball, and I'm watching and trying to defend the 2010s All Stars with the 90s All Stars, and John Stockton is running away from Steph Curry on the 3-point line, just leaving him wide open.
Isn't it crazy? Yeah. Isn't it crazy? That's the stuff that was happening to me on Xbox One, and it still happens on PC too. It's like the players, first off, they don't help.
No.
One. Number two, they just get blown by. So you have to like switch to all 5 different people, because otherwise they're just going to either get backdoored or they're going to get blown by and whatnot. And they just stand there. Or like you said, the times they run away. Like the defensive AI is so poor on current gen.
It's terrible. Nothing has been done with it. And that was a fear. We did see that in the blogs, that it was all talking about next-gen rewritten defensive AI, etc. Yeah, nothing. I don't want to say no work has gone into it, because I don't know that for sure. But it hasn't resulted. The results are not pleasing. Let me put it that way. I don't want to cast aspersions on effort. Yeah.
I played a game, I told you about this, of NBA Live 16 with sticky fingers. Earlier today, we connected on Parsec. And the defensive AI, the way they rotate, the way they play on-ball defense is far more sound than what's in NBA 2K22 current gen. NBA Live 16. I thought we were supposed to be improving.
Yeah.
I thought that's what happens, right? It's
the shooting.
Yeah,
I don't mind the new shot meter, the new mechanics, but I have noticed that it is very easy for the CPU to take away your green release, to take away your and really smother you while drilling shot after shot with you doing the same kind of right in their face defense at the other end. It reminds me a lot of NBA Live 19 and how shooting was messed up there. So it's one of those things where people can say, oh, get good, you need to get used to it, but I'm seeing that same kind of imbalance was there in previous games where the CPU could just hit everything in your face and then they'd just get slightly in yours and you would brick shots. I'm seeing a lot of that, and not just and miss them badly. And remember, we said that before a couple of episodes ago when we were talking about the gameplay blog, or was it last week? And we noted the whole issue with protected shots in 2K16 and 2K17. It feels like that's happening again in 2K22 current gen.
Yeah, so it sounds like you played it a little bit. Do you have enough for pros and cons, or do you want to spend more time with it? I have enough. I've spent enough time with both games, many games on both of them. I've even done some slider tweaks on both games and messed with them, and I'm sure the Live King appreciates that because I know he does that as well. Every single year. He just saw me. He just commented actually on one of the YouTube videos that I uploaded for NBA 2K22 current gen gameplay. But do you have enough?
I have initial impressions, and they're not good. But at the same time, I'm more hopeful for PS5, for next gen. My initial impressions are that I'll be playing, if I'm playing 2K22 this year, if I do spend time with it, it's going to be on PS5. I do have the PS4 version coming, as well as the PS5 version, and of course PC is the one I've been playing. Look, I want to give it a chance to actually get the updates down and to really play it and not give in to frustration, because, again, I saw so many legacy issues and new ones, new issues with the shooting, the CPU feeling a step or two quicker than the user control players, a couple of really cheap offensive fouls that shouldn't have been charging fouls at all, should have been no calls if anything. So there's a lot of legacy issues there. That's just a few off the top of my head, and I couldn't get to halftime without I think this is no better than 2K21. It feels worse in many ways. I will come back to it. These impressions may just be again, it hasn't been properly updated because of the issues with PC at the moment that I referred to. So I do reserve the right to change my opinion. I couldn't really give a full pros and cons list, but for me, it just feels like 2K21 with some new issues and a lot of legacy issues. That's my initial impressions.
Well, first impression is so important.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I mean, it's just so important to be able to pick it up and, be able to jump into a game and be like, hey, this looks, this feels great. And when you have the opposite and you pick it up and you have all of these frustrations and everything, it's a red flag. And, I hope that when you revisit it, it's more enjoyable. I'm going to send you some of the slider tweaks that I did. Mm-hmm. That Great. Made it a little bit more enjoyable for my brother and I as well. And I plan on creating a thread on the NLSC with those again this year. You know what? Maybe I'll go into my pros and cons. And I'm actually going to start with next gen and then go backwards to current gen. Sure. Because the experience is a little bit better on next gen, and I want to get into that. So let's get into the pros for next gen. Now, my brother, I've played several games against the computer. I've played a couple games against my brother, and then we've played 4 games on the same team using Legends, like we do every year. We do our Legends seasons, where we put all the Legends on one team, and we play against regular NBA teams, and we go for stats, and it's fun. So let's start with the pros for next gen. So better defensive rotations. Players are not getting lost as often. So basically, as far as like the help defense, it's coming faster, and it's just a lot more reliable. They said that in the developer blogs that defense was a focus on ball and off ball, in transition, all of that. And it is better. They did a good job with that. There's also negative aspects to defense, which we'll get into in a minute. But players can test shots more often, and that's also a plus. So you're not just in a position where your defender is, like, whether he's on your team or not, he's actually putting a hand up. Somebody's not just going to shoot over him, and he's not just going to stand there like he does, like what you were just talking about, basically, like in current gen, where they just stand there sometimes. So definitely better on the defensive end. And the good thing about that is when you're playing offense, you have to work harder. Like you can't just always go wide and score. You can't just constantly ISO and score on the computer. They're going to use their body to block you off. They're going to force you into a hip ride, which is oftentimes slow motion, which is super frustrating, but they will force you into a hip ride. If you get to the hoop, you can bet there's going to be contact, and there are going to be possibly multiple players making contact with you when you drive to the hoop. So that's a pro. The defense is definitely improved over 2K21. The shooting feels great. My brother and I were talking about this tonight. There's a negative aspect to shooting. The shots on the move are terrible. They make no sense. Everybody has the exact same shot on the move. They do that little leg kick. Still, it's the one from 2K21 next gen, so that's bad. But as far as like shooting mechanics, like when you release the ball, it's not rushed, it's not too slow. Shooting's great. Ball handling is tighter overall, as far as doing like wide crossovers, doing quick dribbles, all of that stuff. There seems to be less animation delay with the ball handling. We enjoy stringing together moves. I showed you some of the ones from current gen where it was a little bit tighter, where I did a couple moves with Kobe Bryant and Carmelo Anthony. We'll get into that in a minute. But, yeah, dribbling overall feels a little bit better, and I enjoy that. Stringing moves together just overall feels more rewarding. There's no heavy delay in animations. At times in 2K21, I felt like on Next Gen, I felt like there was a delay from when I hit the button and it happened on screen. There seemed to be a little bit more of a passing delay at times in 2K21. It feels a little bit better in 2K22. Going for steals, and I know that this is a big one with you, going for steals feels less canned and more rewarding. Sure, sometimes they still grab the guy and sometimes they're still lunging, but if you time your steal right in NBA 2K22, like if you time your swipe, a lot of times you can get the ball and it feels rewarding, and you can start your fast break and whatnot. So that definitely feels better. It still feels really good to get into the passing lanes and get steals. So another good aspect of the defense. Blocking shots and rebounding is as strong as ever, and I think that that's a staple for 2K games, to have strong block shots and rebounding mechanics, especially since like 2K16, I would say. They're usually strong in those regards. In that regard, presentation is great. I like the new stat pop-ups during the game, the new stat screens at halftime and post-game, and I like the edit team screen. You can see more. I like the little portraits on the top left. I still think that looks great. The going in to edit the player, it now shows the full body at first instead of the face, which was tough to get used to. But it has a nice appeal and a nice background. They added the PA announcers, and that is a really nice touch. And it is cool to play in different arenas and get the different PA announcers. So before I get into the cons, I mean, that should get you a little excited.
Oh, it does. And it lines up with what a lot of people have been saying on Twitter, that they feel this is the best 2K game ever. I'm always wary of that because we seem to hear that every year. We hear this is the best and this is the worst. All the knee-jerk reactions are at launch, are they not? So I'm always, until I get my hands on that version, which this is on me for going physical this year, because I thought, oh yes, I want to get back and have that nice physical collectible for PlayStation 5. And I did order it. I did pre-order it in time, but unfortunately, with the pandemic being the way it is, Australia Post is a bit slow, as you might imagine at the moment, especially if it is coming from interstate. Hopefully, we'll have the PS4 and PS5 versions tomorrow. We're recording this on Sunday. Hopefully, they will arrive on Monday or Tuesday at the latest. I am looking forward to that because I have heard much more. It seems when people are talking about how good it is, obviously there are some people talking about current gen as well, but it seems to be mostly focused on next gen. And I am glad to hear those impressions from you and those specifics. I am expecting a more positive experience because I liked 2K21 Next Gen. I liked it more than current gen. I played a fair bit of it. It's just that I did get a bit bored with my team by the end and got on a retro kick with Live 10 and then 2K14 of course. So I ended up putting it aside. But as I've said before, I did enjoy 2K21 Next Gen. So if it's, would you say that it is at least as good as 2K21 Next Gen in most respects, and better in the ways that you mentioned?
Yes and no, and this is why it's not the best 2K ever. So let's get into the cons.
Go ahead.
Because that's a tough one to answer. Yeah, there's a couple frustrating things that weren't as bad in 2K21, and then some unnecessary stuff that they added to 2K22 that can make it less enjoyable. So why don't we get into that?
I feel like you're going to say something about the dunk meters. I'm guessing.
Oh, that's in there. That's in there.
Okay.
But there's way more than that. So here's the cons. So sliding and skating, and I showed you a video of this, sliding and skating and even floating above the court is still a big issue. And the sliding, skating, and the floating above the court is actually worse in 2K22 than it was in 2K21. It impacts outcomes and results. It impacts feel. So it's not just like a cosmetic issue. And I showed you a post that I made from back around the 2K18 time when they put in the new motion system, and I showed you the type of sliding that was going on. And then I showed you the next-gen clip of NBA 2K22, and it looks very similar, basically exactly the same. And it's just really frustrating to see that and to feel it on the sticks, because remember they talked about the new foot planting tech, right?
Oh, yeah.
With NBA 2K21, and even in the developer blog, Mike Wang had stated we were able to achieve foot planting that we weren't able to achieve on prior gen, which is a lie, because there was still more skating in 2K21 than there was in 2K15, 16, 17, and in more skating than what we had in 2K12, 2K13, 2K14 PC, etc. So it really bothers me to see that, and to see those comments made, and then to pick up the sticks and feel it and see how poor the foot planting still is, and how more poor it is than those games that I just mentioned. One thing that I think that this bothers me even more than the foot planting issue. Being sucked into defenders constantly, even with body up sensitivity turned down to 0, it's absolutely driving me insane. We are back to what really hurt NBA 2K20 gameplay. We're talking about being ahead on the fast break by like 5 to 6 feet with your defender 5 to 6 feet away from you, and you go up for a layup, and you either get sucked backwards into him, or he gets sucked forwards into you, and what should be a completely wide open layup ends up being a brick. And this ruins like 90% of your fast breaks. It is absolutely constant. And it happens when, say, you grab an offensive rebound and you try to go back up. Your defender can be on the opposite block, and he will be sucked into you, and you will miss that layup. And then you'll grab the rebound, and you'll miss that layup again. And unless you have a dominant big guy, a guy with loaded with badges and all of that stuff, good luck, because you're just going to keep missing over and over and over again. I'm going to have to try to do some serious slider tweaks and testing and all of that stuff to try to fix some of this. But that is the biggest problem with NBA 2K22.
And
next gen.
And that is a problem, because
current gen
sliders, obviously, we can adjust for My League, My NBA, etc., or Play Now games, just your exhibition games. It goes without saying, but some people do forget that you can't tune the games online, or in my team, or in my career, the NBA side of my career. So if there are those problems with the tuning, then there's not much you can do. And of course, you are reliant on the developers to tune properly, but then they listen to the people who want to tune for cheese, and that's the other reason that games... I want to do this year, because I do want to go back to written reviews, as I've said before, but I also want to do a couple of them during the year to revisit the reviews, as we will do on the podcast with our impressions moving forward, of course, because the games do evolve, and those reviews at the start of the season, at launch, are not necessarily reflective of what the game becomes, even a couple of months in. So, but it is great that you're going to be working the sliders. I'd love to do some work with that too. But the problem, of course, is that you don't have the ability to tweak those sliders in all modes.
Right, exactly. And I wanted to jump into my team.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to be doing that. Absolutely. Yeah, actually, the chances are very low that I'm going to be doing that now. Because out of the box, I mean, it's terrible. And even, so I actually went in and I also changed body up sensitivity to 0, driving contact frequency, I turned that down, all of that stuff to try to like loosen it up and make it so you're not sucked in as much. And I can't seem to make it happen less. It just seems to be like built in. So I'm going to keep trying it. And keep messing around with different things. But you're going to drive the lane, and you're like, you know what? I have complete blue sky, and there's nobody around me. And then all of a sudden, you're completely sucked into a defender, or a defender is sucked into you, and you brick a layup. And it just happens so often. And that's not the way you improve defense. That's just more artificial BS.
That
right?
sounds like the Band-Aid fix from 2K18.
Right, it's like a Band-Aid fix. It's artificial. It's BS. So that's one thing that really hurts current gen and next gen. And also another con too is the face-up game is still incredibly blah. If you try to make a move, you'll drop the ball often, or if you try to make a move, it will throw you into like this slow motion side by side. Or you'll try to make a move and you'll drop the ball and pick it up, and then you've lost your dribble. So the face-up game is still incredibly poor. The post game is super frustrating at times because just like in 2K21, you'll try to do like a quick spin move, and it makes you go incredibly wide in slow motion, whether it's trying to turn into the hoop or trying to turn baseline, etc. So those are still aspects that are super frustrating. And those dramatically impact gameplay and how you use certain players. Contact dunks and oops meter. First off, they can't be turned off. If you turn off layup timing, it doesn't turn off the oop meter or, the oop user timing or contact dunk user timing. You can't turn it off. How they put something new like this into production and then not allow you to turn it on or off, turn it off, that's a red flag. Like, why would you not give us that option? That's number one. Number two, you can turn off the meters, but in order to turn off those meters, you can't just turn shot meter off because they're separate. You have to turn gameplay indicators off. And when you turn gameplay indicators off, you can't use, like, icons go away, like your icon passing goes away. And all the gameplay indicators go away. So it's either you go no gameplay indicators at all, or you have all gameplay indicators on. Maybe you turn the shot meter off, but the alley-oop meter and the contact dunk meter is still there. So that's it. I mean, those are two of the issues. The other thing that drives me nuts is it doesn't function well. It doesn't make sense. The alley-oop meter doesn't make sense, and the contact dunk meter doesn't make sense. Why are we having meters on dunks? You're flushing the ball down a hoop. Like, there's no reason to put a meter behind a dunk or an alley-oop. There's so many different animations on the dunks, the contact dunks and the alley-oops that the timing is different on each one of them, and they happen so fast in the game because the game is fast. They happen so fast in the game that not all the timing is the same, and it's almost impossible to do it. So you're in there, you're trying to complete routine alley-oops, like your guy is wide open going towards the hoop, and you're like, all right, I'm going to throw him an alley-oop. And the end user, which is my brother on this, has to time his catch and dunk, and we don't know what animation is going to come, and we get some of them, but we're missing like half of them, wide open alley-oops. And the mechanic, there should be an option to turn off the mechanic, and there isn't. Shots on the move are still terribly unrealistic and feel poor. I mentioned that. Broadcast camera issue, you know about this. And the silence around it really bothers me. So they removed broadcast generic from next gen. So there's broadcast low, and then like you can rig a nosebleeds cam with height 1, zoom 1, key zoom off or on if you want to kind of look like broadcast. But the broadcast low and the broadcast or broadcast stadium they're often way too close, and they're not as adjustable, and they're just not even close to as good as broadcast generic. So I don't know why they took out broadcast generic. But in my NBA, and they still haven't fixed this, and this blows my mind. How is this an oversight? I hope it's an oversight and they're going to fix it. But there are no broadcast cams available in my NBA.
Ridiculous.
0. There's rail, which is that incredibly close-up, low-to-the-ground view, and 2K cams, and that's it. So if you start a my NBA, you can't play on broadcast. There's no way to do it. And TG So Good found out, and this is why I think it's an oversight and a mistake, and they should fix it. I'm sick of the silence around it. But he found a way that, like, if you lock on a player and then go into camera, you have a couple broadcast cameras available in my NBA.
It's a bug, basically. It sounds like there's a bug.
Yeah, it's a bug, but they should at least come out and acknowledge it, because there's a lot of people upset about it. I think you've seen a lot of the complaints.
Oh, yeah. And the pushback. Who plays on broadcast cam? A lot of people. Shut up. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
Exactly. There are a lot of people, especially in my NBA, in a mode like that, right? So a couple more things. The roster issues. I already showed some video and screenshots of this. You remember that really long thread I made on Twitter where Jermaine O'Neal only had like a 16 on post-up tendency, which means he'll hardly post up at all, where Nick Van Exel had Vince Carter's signatures copied over to him, and he had like a 70 on driving dunk tendency.
Oh, yeah.
Where Billy Cunningham was a complete copy and paste signature-wise of Blake Griffin, and where Mario Chalmers is a complete copy and paste of Mike Conley, and all of those issues that I was mentioning in that thread, basically all of them are there on Next Gen, and all of them are there on Current Gen. They don't learn. They don't listen, and they don't learn. Like, I am so sick of this issue not gaining more traction and more people talking about it. It is lazy. It is cheap labor. This would be cheap labor for it to have somebody come in and fix these roster issues and actually work on the tendencies and the ratings and the signatures and everything. And they won't do it. They won't bring somebody in who knows what they're doing. We have a modding community that does it for free, right?
Yeah.
And all of these roster issues are still there, and it dramatically impacts the way these players and teams play on the floor. It's ridiculous. You have players that were really fast, like Michael Finley, moving like a slug up and down the floor. You have players like Amari Stoudemire struggling mightily to get down the floor with the ball. You have guys like Dirk Nowitzki being slow as hell with the ball. All of this. You have just these unbelievably ridiculous tendencies, copy and paste spreadsheet stuff, and they won't fix it. And it is just absolutely mind-blowing, and they've been getting away with it for years, and I just think that it's so disrespectful to the past players and teams and whatnot. So, yeah, it's not right.
And it's not surprising. We called it. We called it on a couple of episodes ago that this was going to be the case. And unfortunately, you bring up this stuff and people say, oh, you're taking this too seriously or whatever. And no, I mean, this is a sim game that's supposed to represent history and the current NBA. Accuracy is kind of a big deal. This isn't NBA Jam Tournament Edition where Dino Raja inexplicably has a three-point rating of 9, which is completely wrong. But it's Jam. You know, sometimes the ratings are fudged so that certain teams can be competitive with each other. And sometimes they were working off information. They couldn't access all the information that we can these days with Basketball Reference and whatnot at readily available. So they would make mistakes there. But it's not that. This is, and they brought on obviously Mike Stauffer, B. Edwards Roy, to work on the rosters because he had he was very well. His rosters were very well received in the community. He was considered one of the best roster makers. So it is very frustrating that the rosters are in such shape and continue to be. And as far as the dunk meter goes and everything, we called it. It's going to be very interesting to see whether they do patch it out or adjust it. I'm seeing a lot of issues with it online because of course you have, you mentioned the timing, how quick it is, and of course online you've got a bit of input lag and a bit of lag in general. So I think it's just one of those things that wasn't properly tested or thought out. I'm not surprised. You look at a concept like Rookieville last year, to get into the city, having to play against other people to earn your way into the city, which became very difficult once everybody had the game and new people weren't coming on. So there's a lot of it's one of those concepts that I think 2K has kind of the developers have looked at, and it's worked in some respects, but they haven't looked, and here's this phrase again, big picture, at how these mechanics work in all situations. And it's going to be interesting to see how they address that moving forward. Is it going to be one of those situations where they say that they agree with the elitists, and they just say, get good. But a broken mechanic is a broken mechanic. And I put this out every time somebody says that, because, and, shout out to Kid Cash. He knows how much I hate the get good rhetoric, because I bring it up a lot on the show. But let me put it to you this way, Derek. NBA Live 07, right? 3 shoot buttons. Bad idea. Didn't work out. Did people just need to get good then? Or was it a bad idea? No, it was a bad idea. And 2K is not immune to bad ideas.
Bring something up, okay? You're going to see, I'm going to be uploading gameplay of my brother and I playing against each other. And you're going to see us making some alley-oops. And you're going to see us finishing off contact dunks. It's not that I can't do it.
Yeah.
Okay? Mechanic doesn't make sense. It's ridiculous. Just like when I showed NBA 2K21 gameplay and they were talking about, the shooting with the stick, like the aiming. And I showed in the video, I said, here, watch as I make 5 or 6 threes in a row, green release using the stick with Kawhi Leonard. It's not that I can't do it. It's that the mechanic is frustrating and it makes no sense. The way it worked didn't belong in a basketball video game. Okay? And that's the way I feel about the contact dunk meter and the alley-oop meter. It's another layer that not only doesn't make sense, but it doesn't function properly. Okay? So that's the way I look at that. And you want to know how disconnected they are? I just want to point out the people that do these rosters for NBA 2K. Get this. Michael Jordan's speed rating. Michael Jordan, in his prime, Michael Jordan's speed rating in 92 for the 92-93 Jordan is 85. Luka Doncic's speed rating is 83.
Huh. Yeah. That sounds about right, doesn't it? Yeah. No.
So if people actually go in and they looked at what they were doing on these tendencies and these attributes and the signatures with the classic teams, and even minus like the copy and paste spreadsheet stuff, which I've mentioned, and you actually started comparing player to player, you would be like, oh my God, these guys have absolutely no idea what they're doing. And it's just super frustrating to go through it. But yeah, there's my pros and cons for next gen. So again, this isn't being a hater. Okay. We're playing both current gen and next gen. I own both of them. I want to make it known that there are improvements to NBA 2K22 next gen, and we will be playing it, but there's still a lot of frustration with the game for the reasons that I stated.
I'm tempering my expectations, as I was even before release. And as soon as I saw people saying it's the best game ever, and anybody who says otherwise is just hating, that's all noise. I hear that every single year. I've been covering games for the NLSC for 20 years now. I've seen this cycle. I wrote the Friday Five a couple of weeks ago about it, that we have each stage of a game's release. We've got that pre-release hype. We've got that launch hype. We've got the backlash and the backlash to the backlash. Then we've finally got some more nuanced takes as everybody, as the fanboys and haters just kind of simmer down, and people who know their stuff are giving those pros and cons. Of course, people like us are going to be trying to do that kind of coverage from the start and have balanced coverage and accurate pros and cons lists as you've done here. But that's every year we see that cycle. And we've talked before about how people say, oh, people hate every new game and praise the last one. But there's a lot of people that, in fact, probably more people that praise the current game, the new game, blindly and immediately dump on the last one, and without realizing that there's a lot of stuff. And then a few months go by and realize that actually it kind of is like last year's game, or maybe the jump isn't as big. Now, it does sound like there are some nice improvements, and I am looking forward to playing the PS5 version and actually playing the version that has got the most attention this year. It's clear that current gen didn't, as I'm sure you'll get into in a moment. But current gen very much disappointed me. So I think PS5... The bar is set pretty low for me at the moment with 2K22 and current gen. So I am going to be wary of those issues in next gen. And obviously, He pointed them out, and some other people have pointed them out as well. I hope those issues can be addressed without ruining the game and overcompensating for people who want cheese back in the game. That is also another problem that happens post-launch pretty much every year, especially with the online scene being as big as it is now. But I am looking forward to getting my hands on it still, and I want to be open-minded and everything, and certainly honest in my appraisal of it, and hopefully I will enjoy it for several months at the very least. But yeah, it does sound that there's a few issues there on top of some good issues, good additions rather, I should say. But yeah, that's next gen. So what about current gen?
Yeah, this one's a little bit more relevant for the NLSC modding community, obviously, for the NLSC community in general, because obviously we got the current gen version for PC, and a lot of people were upset about that. But there are some pros to that from a modding perspective. As you know, it's just incredibly impressive. Luya already came out with the hook tool, and it works amazing. So people were able to get their mods working.
Pretty much after the game went live, there was Luya. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable. I thank him so much. Just all the work that he does every year, giving us the tools. So I was able to get the NBA on TNT scoreboard in there, and that's on that video that I just uploaded for NBA 2K22 gameplay. Some of the cyber faces work. My Walter McCarty didn't. I got to figure that out. Some of the cyber faces work. Some of the scoreboards work as long as they don't have logos attached to them. The floors work. Apparently the arenas do not. A lot of the mods work, and that's the bonus for it being current gen on PC. So we can jump right in there and use those presentation mods and convert some of the faces over, or just plop them into the mods folder, and they'll work right away, even without any edits, etc. But obviously, as you and I have talked about so many times, gameplay is the most important. So let's get into the pros and cons, in my opinion, for current gen PC 2K22. So the pros: dribbling feels tighter and more enjoyable than 2K21, in my opinion. I actually uploaded that video that I was just talking about, Clippers versus Nets, my brother and I going against each other. And you could probably tell by watching the video that the stuff we're pulling off with the dribbles, it feels pretty good. I think that dribbling in place feels good. Sometimes on the move it does not. But if you're ISOing against your guy, and you put the ball on the floor, you can do some pretty cool stuff. It isn't super exaggerated dribbling either, which is nice. It does feel like it has a good flow to it overall. You can do your wide crossovers, your quick crossovers, back to back. So double crossovers, all of that stuff, go into a spin move. It feels pretty good, especially in that ISO realm. And so that's a plus. Less input lag, I'd say, than 2K21, so less delay from when you hit the button and it happens on screen. Things are pretty snappy as far as, like, if you're passing the ball, trying to go into a dribble move, trying to make a quick cut off of a catch, all of that stuff. So not like many heavy animation delays or anything like that. PA announcers is a nice touch. I am glad that they brought that over to current gen. I think that, again, playing in different arenas, it gives it a different feel. It's not generic, all of that stuff. So that is a nice touch.
There were questions about that too. People weren't sure whether that was going to be next gen only. So that's good that happened.
Yeah, it's good that they did that. I mean, I would have much rather have them bring over strong defensive rotations.
Sure, yeah.
Strength transition defense and help defense and on-ball defense and stronger and better player movement without the ridiculous, hunchback motions and all of that stuff that's still in the game. But yeah, cool. PA announcers, give them a check. So for me, those are the only pros that I can really find in current gen. Otherwise, it looks like 2K21, which is why the mods work, remember. Basically all of them. It looks like 2K21. It often acts like 2K21, but there is a couple issues that are really nagging. And one of them is new and worse than what it was in 2K21. So the foot planning and the player movement overall is still just as poor as 2K21. The hunched back players, changing directions, and the player just it looks absolutely ridiculous and humanly impossible. They're not smooth. It's not smooth player movement. It was far better on the old motion system with 2K16 and 2K17. It just made a whole lot more sense. Accelerating as well made more sense on the old motion system. The feel of a fast break felt better. The feel of moving on defense felt better on the old motion system, as far as like sliding your feet or trying to come over for help defense, all of that stuff. So, yeah, big major red flag for me is when I first put on current gen and I saw the hunched over players and they were moving ridiculous. And I told you that was going to be my major red flag. Remember that?
Yep,
I said that in the last podcast. So again, yeah, foot planning and poor player movement are still an issue. And that same sucking in issue on next gen is on current gen, and it's probably worse.
I felt that, yeah. I felt that myself as well.
Actually, that was one of the first things you mentioned to me, I think, when you brought up that you had tried it. My God. I mean, you'll miss layup after layup after layup, and you have complete blue sky on the right side of the rim and the defenders on the left side of the rim, and his body is just dragged into you. And what's funny is, and I pointed this out to my brother, and this was really telling. We put in the slow motion. We put in the into replay, and I went up to finish on the right side, and the defender was on close to the opposite block, to be honest with you. And he puts his arm out in his hand, and he's still probably 4 feet from me, but you see my player's body move backwards. That's how crazy the sucking in thing is. That means that player who was almost on the opposite block, who put his hand out, affected my wide open layup just by being in the paint vicinity of me. And that is just a massive red flag. So, I again went in with the sliders, turned body up sensitivity to 0. I started messing with things, and I can't seem to fix it yet. And it's just a horrible feeling, and and the game still has the slow motion side by sides. And where you get like a step on your guy, but instead of being able to go to the hoop, it drags you. Like it's just a slow motion drag. And then if you push the shoot button, you're put into this wild flailing shot that has 0% chance of going in.
I noticed that straight away. Same as last year. And it is that they feel like they're a step quicker, that they can just, and they'll feel like they can just brush past you like they're coated in oil. They can just slip by you and they just suck you into them. It's no better. And those you mentioned, the being able to contest from the opposite block. That's the ghost contests that they've worked on for next gen. But obviously, current gen, it's still a thing.
Yeah, I don't want to hear that the game is more realistic or plays better than even a game like Live 16. I will say again, and I think Sticky Fingers would come on and say something similar, because we actually had a really good game. Him and I played against each other on Live 16. I was the Wolves, he was the Hawks, and you don't have those same frustrating issues. You don't have it. You don't have those stupid slow motion, unrealistic side-by-sides and the ghost contests. And I like that term, actually, ghost contests. The ridiculous constant missing of layups that I would make if I had that shot in the NBA with that much space. Like, I can't miss that. You know what I mean? Like, that's the type of space that we're talking about. And it doesn't have that wacky player movement, that the ridiculous change of direction movement and all of that stuff. Yeah, I'm just frustrated how basketball gaming hasn't gotten better from a gameplay and realism perspective, right? And from a fun perspective. And I feel bad for the consumer base, because you're seeing those negative reviews, and it's not all server related, right?
No,
like it's not
or microtransactions or whatever, yeah.
Right, or microtransactions related either. You're hearing a lot of issues about the gameplay and how it's stale and how the legacy issues and stuff like that. So people, listen, I've given the pros and cons. I'm not being a hater. These are real issues. And I can show these issues in video. Again, we're making the best of it. We played multiple games of Legends tonight in a My NBA on Next Gen. We played against each other on Current Gen. All of that stuff. We went into something we never do because we don't really have to. We went into scrimmage on our My NBA, and we were practicing the timing of the alley-oops because we're like, listen, we want to try to get better at this because we can't turn it off. Right? So we're in there, we're practicing contact dunk timing, and we're practicing alley-oop timing, and we're practicing it without the shot meter, so without the gameplay indicators on and all of that stuff. It's, you know this as well as I do too, because you see me post about it. Every single year, I try to make the best of it. Every single year, I post a sliders thread usually, or I'm messing with sliders, or I'm talking about them, and I'm posting gameplay, and I say, here's my new sliders, or here's the tweaks that I made, and I'm trying to make the best of it, and I'm going to do the same thing with 2K22.
And that's an important point to stress, and we touched on it last week as well, but it comes down to the whole get good and you're just hating arguments, is that you didn't just find a new mechanic and say, you didn't just throw up your hands, throw a tantrum and say, no, hate it, don't want to use it, this sucks. You tried to master it. You've gone into scrimmage, you've tried to master those mechanics. Say, okay, there's a learning curve here, possibly, so let's give it a try. Let's get used to it. A broken mechanic or a poorly designed mechanic is what it is. And some ideas don't pan out. I refer again to NBA Live 07. 3 shoot buttons. In theory, okay, more control over the shot type. Fantastic. It didn't work out so well. There were other issues, underlying technical issues with Live 07 that caused problems, but even the fact that Live immediately moved away from 3 shoot buttons kind of, it answers the question, was that a good idea? Probably not, just to be very kind about it. So some mechanics don't work out. Some ideas do not pan out. That's just the way it goes. And you've given it a try, and we do try to make the most of the games. So it will be, again, as I said, it will be interesting to see how 2K handles that, how the developers handle that moving forward, because it seems that is one of the biggest complaints, is that timing, especially online. I mean, you're just playing it locally, so you've got no lag at all. To actually and it's already difficult as far as the timing and everything, and how rapidly the meter comes up and the different animations, as you said. Trying to account for that and lag online just doesn't seem like a good idea at all. I obviously, again, I need to play that PS5 version to really give my thoughts on it, and also to play online to really comment on that as well. But as soon as I saw that and saw people mentioning that as an issue, I wasn't surprised. But I think that's sounds like a very fair pros and cons list to me. Again, I do want to give the current gen version more of a go after I can get these updates to come through. I want to give the PS5 version, the next gen version, a try as well. I'll have more impressions, not only in my written reviews, but in future podcasts, hopefully as soon as next week, when the my copies hopefully arrive tomorrow or Tuesday at the latest. So we will continue to cover that. But any other final thoughts, final first impressions for the moment?
I think there's a couple things that just really bother me about what's happened to basketball video games. And I think you had mentioned like the Fortnite crowd, right?
Yes.
I mean, when gameplay indicators on, sometimes it feels like you're playing like a game like that, or like an MMORPG. Like there's all this stuff, like you got your meters and you got like your indicators everywhere. I'm just surprised there's not a map. Like put a map on my screen, why don't you? Because we're just turning this into something that's not basketball.
There is a map in the city. There is a map in the city, yeah.
There you go. So, but you turn the gameplay. I've actually enjoyed turning the gameplay indicators off, and I'm actually glad they have that option, because you know what? Get that out of here. Like I just don't want to see all of that, etc. I'm frustrated what's happened as far as, like you had talked about, like Band-Aid fixes, and that's what I think the sucking in is. The ghost defense, the ghost contest, and that's what I think the slow motion side-by-sides are. I think that those are Band-Aid fixes, and they are not realistic. They don't feel good. They're frustrating from a gameplay perspective, and they don't make any sense. So that's part of the new motion system, and so that's super frustrating. And then again, the player movement, just like the way the ball warps, the changing of directions of the players, the way the players feel, how they really don't have much weight to them at all. etc., like they did in 2K16, 2K17, and whatnot in 2K15, or even in like say 2K14 or 2K13 and whatnot, and how they've hurt the face-up game, they've hurt the post game, important parts of basketball, they've hurt the shots on the move game now because they all have that same kick on the shot, all of that stuff. They've gotten rid of that portion of authenticity, and good luck trying to use KG like he really played, all of that. Like, and then all the roster issues, it's like, what happened? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but look at all the new clothes, Derek. Look at all the new clothes you can buy for your player.
Yeah, it's just all, I said this to you before the call, and people are going to think this is trivial, but I'm trying to make a point with it. They updated, like, they have all the PA announcers. They have all of that, and that's a cool feature, and it's a presentation feature again. But, when you drive and you get hit on a shot, everybody has the same yell. Every player has the exact same yell. It's like, it's the same sound effect for the player. And it's not about the on-court action anymore and the players and all of that stuff. It's not as much about that. It's just more about advertising. It's more about marketing and the presentation, glamorous aspects of it and stuff like that. It just feels like it's not as much about basketball anymore.
Yeah.
It's about transactions, fit. It's about getting people online, getting people to, get into the park or the rec, all of that stuff, into the city. It's not as much about that gameplay in between the lines. And that's where my frustration lies.
No, that's, I absolutely share those frustrations. It does seem like sometimes those other aspects of the experience are prioritized over actual basketball. But yeah, I will give more thoughts, first-hand impressions next week after I've spent more time with a hopefully fixed and working current-gen version. If nothing else, I'm guessing the PS4 version will get the updates through. This does seem to be a PC-only issue with the updates, so I will get to play that one for current-gen and, of course, PS5 for next-gen. You touched on the city. Obviously, the game is out now, so the developer blogs that came out during the week, it's not really something we need to cover in depth because people have already read them and have experienced the game for themselves. But I did want to touch on them a little bit because I will be, if nothing else, checking out the city to see how it works this year. Of course, in the city, it is more of an open-world interactive adventure than a cinematic story as in previous my careers. A lot of people seem to be enjoying that freedom aspect, and it seems to be something that they were always trying to move towards with first the neighborhood and now the city. And there's a personal brand where, depending on how you react to situations, depends on what kind of image you cultivate, and that determines which kind of endorsements you get. There's side quests. There's very much like an RPG aspect to it. Entrepreneurial pursuits, including fashion and musical projects, which I know I'm sure you're very upset about missing out on that in my career, Derek. I know how much you are looking forward to that.
I'm so glad. I am so glad I'm not playing those modes. And I'm just going to say this. I know that it's different times and everything, but the soundtrack sucks.
It hasn't gripped me yet. No, new seasons will bring new music. We'll see if anything wets our whistle in that respect. But it does sound the new approach is resonating compared to the old gen approach of that cinematic story. So I'm glad to hear they're moving in that direction. It's a mode that I'm moving away from, obviously, but at the same time, it does sound like an improvement that they're making. So that's good. Seasons we've covered before, and there's seasons level 1 to 40 every season. Getting to level 40 in 4 seasons, it gets you to the legend level, basically replacing my rep in next gen. Affiliations are still there. One thing that I was disappointed to read in the blog, Derek, was I mentioned matchmaking before because they've got the matchmaking buildings on next gen, not current gen, which is a problem, but it all seems to be 3-on-3 and 1-on-1. So it doesn't sound like any work has gone into proper matchmaking and everything in the Rec or 2K Pro-Am, the 5-on-5 NBA rules-oriented modes. So that is a problem. That is a disappointment. Doesn't sound like much has changed in that regard from what I'm hearing on Twitter. I can't give any first-hand impressions at the moment, but I'm disappointed that it wasn't. They have badly needed proper matchmaking in NBA 2K for years now, and they've made some steps towards that from the looks of things with the on the next-gen version, but it's not enough. And it's a reason why the online scene is so toxic and so elitist and just not very fun. Nowhere near as fun as it should be.
They want it that way. That's why it's not there.
They do.
There's a purpose.
It does, and it fosters that attitude. It forces people to upgrade quicker, which means buying VC, and also, spending to get VC to get the clothes because we don't have the right fit. You don't get people playing with you in the playground. So there's definitely a method to the madness, absolutely. And I refer to Rocket League a lot, and it's just done online matchmaking so well. It's got such a friendlier scene, a much better leveling system and matchmaking system, and it's why it's got a great online scene and a great esports league for Rocket League, and 2K doesn't. There's a reason for that. 2K is so far behind on this. And it's funny because they want to be a big player in the scene, yet they're not doing what it needs to be done to have a great online scene because they're also so wrapped up in microtransactions. And when people say, oh, it's just business and this and that and it's optional, again, they're missing the big picture, and they're not looking at how that approach just infects everything else and just infects and affects the online scene. And yeah, they haven't really addressed that. But it does sound like there are some nice improvements to the city, etc. Visually, great. It's I appreciate the effort, but it's not really it's not what's going to make or break the mode. The fact that you can see wear and tear on the buildings. Hats off to the arts team, but that's not the main problem with my career in its connected modes. But it does sound like there has been some improvements, and I will check them out myself. The My NBA blog, I was quite pleased to read some of the things that they've done with the staff there. Although there is a bug where if you don't fill the staff properly, the game crashes. Instead of just saying start again or warning you that it's not properly filled, the game just crashes. And people are defending the bug as saying, oh, well, it shows you something's wrong. Yeah, but it's still a crash. It's still an indication that it's not working properly.
There's two things I wanted to bring up with that actually really quick. Well, first off, it wouldn't be an NLSC podcast without us mentioning big picture or get good at least once. So we've done that.
Or at least 5
good.
times, as the case may be, yeah.
Right, exactly. Number two, my suggestion didn't make it in. The waiving the 14-player roster team requirement. I didn't see it. So, now if you try to go into my NBA with retro teams and if they don't have 14 guys, the game will automatically place players on your team, random players. So you'll have a retro team that you put in, and there'll be 10 to 12 of the real players, and then you'll have who's somebody I could bring up? OG Anunoby. You'll have him on your team or something. Or it will pull somebody from the free agent list or something like that. So that's a little frustrating. So you can continue. I just wanted to bring that up, that I was a little disappointed to see that didn't make it in, because it seems like an obvious setting that should be in there.
It is, and retro rules and things like that, it's wait again until next year, I suppose, on that front. They've made some improvements to the training, and they've expanded the staff, so there's a whole different roles and different areas within the organization. There is that bug that I mentioned, which hopefully will get fixed up, because again, the game crashing is not a good indication that you haven't done the right job. That is an oversight in the fact that people are trying to justify that. I mean, certainly if you've got to that point, you haven't hired properly, so yeah, I can understand that. But again, a game crashing is not a good indication of it's not a good result for you not doing the job properly. So that is an issue. Staff develop over time, which is nice, because you can have different staff members evolve into other roles. They give a real-life example of Greg Popovich starting out as the general manager of the Spurs and, of course, stepping down onto the sidelines and becoming one of the all-time great coaches. So they've made some nice improvements there. There's some unspecified minor improvements and bug fixes in the blog. They just mentioned that at the end there. There's 3 new pre-built expansion teams, the Bronx Brawlers, Honolulu Breeze, and Omaha Airmen. I do love the fact that there's a team called the Breeze in there, because I am a big fan of the Chicago Breeze, the fictional team from World League Basketball. It is the team that inspires the name of my team and Ultimate Team over the years. So it's kind of cool that there's actually an official Breeze team in there. And of course, it's a very tropical sounding name, so being Honolulu is definitely appropriate. Nice that there's some extra expansion teams in there. So some solid improvements there in my NBA and my career. Looking forward to getting into them. But again, no improvements to my league and my GM, etc. on current gen, or certainly not enough to warrant a blog, it seems. So again, just wanted to touch on that very quickly. Obviously, the game is out, so there's no point really breaking down the previews that much. But there is obviously some good stuff there that I'm looking forward to trying out.
I wanted to bring up a couple things. Our old friend Razor from the NLSC, who now works for 2K, did post, or he retweeted, I believe, somebody's screenshot of Latrell Sprewell in game, and I think he did a really good job on Latrell Sprewell with cornrows for the Wolves. So good job, Razor, on that cyberface. I thought it looked really good. I believe he also touched up Hot Rod Williams and a few other people as well, a few other players. I wanted to bring something up, though, about the faces, and this is something you'll probably notice when you go through the retro rosters like I do. So it looks like they got permission to add some more players to some teams. Like on the 0203 Mavericks, you have Evan Eschmeyer, who wasn't there before. On the Blazers 9091, there's Wayne Cooper. But basically almost every single new player that they added to the end of benches are all caps. They're all created players. So you go in and you look at Wayne Cooper and you'll look at Evan Eschmeyer and you'll look at, I'd say there's over a dozen new players added to the teams, even going back to the 70s teams, like Eddie Mast and whatnot on the 71-72 Knicks. But if you look, they're all caps. So I don't know if those are placeholders for getting in, they're going to make faces for those players later, or if they got permission and they were like, all right, just make them created players. Don't bother make the faces. Again, this is something else that I question, because it's like, well, this is cheap labor, right? There's people in the community that would gladly make those faces for you. And I know there's people that work for them as well that would probably tackle those faces. So I don't understand why all of those players are caps.
Hopefully it's a case of they were late additions, perhaps, and they're placeholders.
Something clear. I checked on current gen, I want to say, not next gen.
Right.
I'd have to check. I do think that they're caps on both, but I'll get back to you on that. I think they're all those players are created players on both next gen and current gen, but I'll have to look.
And certainly getting them into the game is better than not at all. And if they are placeholders, so much the better. And of course, on PC we can make use of that. I'm a fan of any content that makes it into the game that we can work with, that lessens the workload and also and gives us that head start on any possible rosters. But yes, certainly. I mean, that would be my guess, if anything, that they're late additions to the roster, and of course, maybe not had time to sculpt all those new faces or whatnot. But they have been pushing through face updates, obviously, over the past few years. So we'll see what happens there. But that's interesting that they've actually gone ahead and added Evan Eschmeyer for one. Obviously, a player that you and I remember because we are roster freaks, and we, you and I, we just probably studied the rosters. We're those fans. We're those gamers that studied the rosters and remember all these players that randomly were role players back when we were growing up watching it. But that is cool that they've done that, and I'm glad that they've at least been able to get a few more names in there. But I still think that they need to make more of an effort to get some of those big names in there. I mean, look, Charles Barkley has been very clear about what it would take to get him in the game, and it's a very fair. What he's asking is very fair, and it's not even about him. It's about the other retired players. So I really think they need to make that effort, and it always feels like they're trying to push it back on him. Like, oh, so he said he wouldn't want to be in the game this year. Oh, he said he'll be in the game if you actually properly compensate retired players. I don't like that about that market. I mean, that's 2K marketing for you, but yeah, it bugs me.
I'm glad to be on PC because at least we can mod him in and it looks just like him.
Oh, true. Yes.
So, yeah, but they need to think big picture, right, Andrew?
They do, and it's a case of the retro teams needing to get good.
Yes,
get gooder.
Absolutely.
Maybe get gooder.
What's so frustrating about that is, I'll critique a game every now and then, and I'll post highlights of my issue sometimes too, as well. And I have those people in the comments that say to me, it's not. There was actually one recently. I think you may have saw it. I critiqued something on NBA 2K22, and somebody goes, if you can't play defense, just say so. Or why don't you just get better at defense and you don't have to worry about it? Or they made a comment like that, or some snobby comment, or somebody said, if you don't like the game and you're not good at it, just don't buy it, or something like that. And that's how I picture them sounding when they say it, by the way. And I'd actually like to play against all of these people. I really would, in just like a 5-on-5 game, and just like destroy them on the sticks, because that would just be so satisfying, because I'm so sick of the get good and, if you have a critique, you must suck at the game, all of that stuff. I don't suck at the game. You don't suck at the game. And the people that are critiquing and bringing up real issues, those are real issues. And it's not because they suck at the game. Most of the time it's like there's actually issues with the game and stuff that's frustrating them.
No doubt. I do want to mention before we move on to the mailbag, just a little bit of interesting trivia with Evan Eschmeyer. How familiar are you with his career path towards the end of his career?
I'm not super familiar. I know that he was on the Mavericks, I want to say, in 01, 02, and 02, 03. I'm not sure how long he was with them. I know that because those are two of the 01, 02 team especially is my brother Mark's one of his favorite teams. So we always try to make sure that team's in a game that we play and when we do a season.
I mean, that's a tremendous team that can win a shot on the buzzer with a three from beyond half court. The 2002 Mavericks. We found that out in live 2010. I
can't believe that. I'm glad that got some comments too.
Oh yeah, I mean,
like people were like, "Oh my god, that's a great play." So that's still one of the best plays that I've ever seen.
It'll be a while. It'll be a while, if ever, before we can top that in a game. I think it's gonna have to be a three from even further back. So Evan Eschmeyer, you are right. He was on the Mavericks in 2003. Was then traded to the Warriors. Was injured at the time. Didn't play a minute for the Warriors through the 2004 season. And then after sitting out that season, was sent back to the Mavericks, where he ultimately retired because of his injuries. So I've been doing a lot of Way Back Wednesday features where I'm talking about players, familiar faces back in familiar places, familiar faces in strange places, returns over before they began, players that appeared only on certain teams in games because they never ended up playing single minute for them in real life. So in the space of a year, Derek, Evan Eschmeyer only played for a certain team in a video game, the Warriors, after being traded. Was set to become a familiar face back in a familiar place when he was traded back to the Mavericks a year later, but then retired before the season, ending a potential return before it even happened, but it was still represented in video games because the rosters were finalized before his retirement. All in the space of a year. That's 3 different trivia notes on the real and virtual hardwood alike for Evan Eschmeyer. And for a player who wasn't a superstar and retired before he was 30, that's a lot of trivia.
That is pretty crazy. You got to do an article on players that played only playoff games for a team in a season. And specifically, the reason why I thought of this is
T-Mac?
You remember Mike Mitchell, who was really great, a great player for the Spurs in the early 80s and whatnot. And they signed him again for the 91-92 season, and he only played in the playoffs. They signed him like right at the end of the season so he could play in the playoffs. And he played a couple minutes, but it's sad when you read the articles on this because he felt like he could make an immediate impact, and the organization was thinking that he could make an impact and all of that stuff, and then he didn't play really at all. But he was on the roster.
Interesting. So I'll have to do some research, because Tracy McGrady is another one, obviously, with the Spurs in 2013.
Another roster thing that came up that was funny is I was playing Ermoli in the NBA Live 10 tournament in the first round, and he was a really good opponent, and I had a really fun time in that series, and he's using the Wolves, and I'm using the Nuggets, and I'm looking, and he's like, Quentin Richardson? Like, why does he have Quentin Richardson on the default roster for the Wolves? And it turns out that they signed Quentin Richardson in August, but they also released him in August. But the NBA Live version that we're playing, the Live 10 version, is the early version.
Without the roster update, yeah.
So Quentin Richardson's on the Wolves.
I noticed that in the default rosters, yeah.
He burned me a little bit in game 1. He hit like 4 threes. I'm like, you shouldn't be here. You're an imposter. But just an interesting thing.
I mean, there's some interesting things in those default rosters of NBA Live 10, and that's where you do see some of those short-lived tenures that didn't actually even make it to happening in real life because the players get released or traded again. And, of course, Jerome James was on the Bulls the previous season, so I was playing those games against B-Train. And at one point, Jerome James came into the game. I think he scored on a dunk. I think I'll give him credit. He got me 2 points at one point, I believe. You've seen the footage. I believe he did score for me at one point.
I think I have that in the highlights, yeah.
So, he wasn't completely useless. He didn't actually play for the Bulls that year. He was released, I believe 2009 was his last year anyway in the league. But Yeah, so you do see some of those interesting things, but another another couple of very exciting games against B Train, very close games this time, right down to the wire. Game 3, very exciting. Managed to pull that out in the clutch with a clutch steal there. He once again came on in the game 2. We've traded wins and losses. No one's won 2 in a row yet. So yeah, and if he gets to game 5, then he'll be the first to win 2 in a row. And hopefully I can I can prevail and move on to face you actually in the tournament. But I did have a shot to tie or win at the end there with Derek Rose. Got sucked into a driving layup, one of those contact layups in Live 10, which is a problem. Wasn't the shot I wanted, but that's just the way it is. The fact that I was in the game after taking some bad shots earlier and missing them, and Salmon's missing a few threes. The fact that I was in the game at all was still exciting at the end there. But what a great couple of games, and I said it last week, but he's good guy and a great competitor, good on the sticks, and also a good sport. Once again, we had an issue where a backcourt violation on a right stick pass, and he turned the ball over to give it back to me. So again, that's the great thing about a tournament like this, is that you can have that kind of sportsmanship, as I said last week. But man, what back and forth white knuckle on the white knuckle on the controller. You know that meme with the person sitting back in the chair and then leaning forward with the controller. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, I have.
It was pretty much like that. It's like, okay, a bit of fun at the start. Okay, now serious, and we're just leaning forward there. White knuckle controller, back and forth all the way to the fourth. You know what? I think we've had a pretty good series so far. I think we're the only one to go the distance, and it seems only appropriate.
I was privileged to be sent that footage so I can make the highlight videos, and I watched both games, and just the back and forths have been awesome. Like, on one end you'll knock down a 3 with John Salmons, and then on the other end he fires up and hits a 3 with Morris Peterson, and he's hitting his mid-range with David West, and you're hitting your mid-range and you're attacking the hoop with Rose, and it's really entertaining. And you notice I included some defensive stops too.
Yes.
Because there's been some good defensive stops, some key blocks, sometimes multiple blocks on one possession, stuff that ignites fast breaks, and really good interceptions in passing lanes and stuff like that. You guys are very evenly matched going by the footage. Like, watching you guys play is really fun. And you guys are using the players to their strengths. Other than that shot I saw B-Train hit with Okafor, that mid-range shot, that killed me. Just kidding. He's been playing great, by the way, and he was wide open, so he hit it. But just watching the way he's used David West in the mid-range and in the post, and then using Chris Paul in the mid-range and taking those step backs and those fadeaways and whatnot, it's just been really fun to watch you guys play. So in this tournament, just so people don't, for those that don't know, Andrew and B-Train are still in the first round. They're the only series left, and they're both tied 2-2. And it's a 5-game series. Game 5 is in Chicago, so Andrew will be at home. And if Andrew wins, we're both at the top of the bracket. He'll play me in the second round, and I'm using the Nuggets. That'll be another 5-game series. And then on the bottom half of the bracket, we have Cavs 4872, the Cavs, versus Q, who's using the Lakers. So it's been a great tournament. It really has. It's been a lot of fun.
People have enjoyed watching it, which is really great to see. Those comments on social media and on YouTube, of course. Some very positive responses to it, and everybody taking part is having fun as well, which is the main thing. And that comes through. It comes through, and even though it is an old game, and yes, dated in some respects, people can, I think, appreciate that competition and the enjoyment that we're getting out of it. That kind of stuff comes through in content, whether it's articles or videos. When you're passionate about it, even if you're criticizing, which this is just pure competition and gameplay, so it's not about criticism, but as long as you are honest and passionate and knowledgeable, and in a situation like this, having fun, and it's not just something done for clicks or whatever. That comes through, and I think people appreciate that kind of content, whether it's fun or critical or whatever. They appreciate that authenticity, even in an old game.
Yeah, I mean, people have specifically pointed out NBA Live 10 in the highlight reels, like the top 10 plays, and they're like, NBA Live 10 still looks so good.
Still
I've
slaps,
had people say that.
They say.
Yeah, it holds up. It looks really good. The lighting and everything, and the animations and all of that stuff. Just Live 10's a really fun game. And like I said on the last podcast, people like watching other people have fun. Like, it's enjoyable to watch other people enjoy themselves. And I think that people see that in those highlights. And it's really a laid-back, not a laid-back, I mean, it's a competitive thing for you, but it's a very loose, I'll use that word, loose, fun experience with NBA Live 10. And I'm looking forward to playing either you or B-Train in the second round, because I think it's going to be a great matchup.
I'm looking forward to it too, and yeah, I once again, as I said last week, I need to bring my A game in the deciding fifth game. So we'll see how that goes, and you will all see the highlights as well, thanks to B-Train for recording that for us, and for you to putting together all the highlights again, organising the tournament. It's great. We want to do more. Before we move on to the mailbag, I do want to mention 2K14, which I've been playing. I've been sending you some highlights here and there, often playing with classic teams as well as a bit of my career, because I didn't play it back in the day, as I've said in previous shows. But I actually looked up how to do alley-oops again, because I'd forgotten, and now I'm obsessed with throwing alley-oops. And you saw some of them. Actually, no, I sent you all of them, didn't I? I sent you all of the ones I was throwing from Peyton to Kemp.
You were like, screw it. Yeah, you were like, screw it. Here's all the alley-oops.
Yeah.
And then one of them made the top 10, and of course it's Peyton to Kemp. We actually had Peyton and Kemp twice in the top 10.
I mean, that's a top 10 in any week in the early to mid-90s, is it not? Peyton to Kemp. That's it.
Yeah, great top 10 this week again too. Like, really good highlight submissions from the Live King and from some new people too as well, who haven't been in the top 10 before. So no, that's been really fun to put together each week, and we got the NBA 2K22 highlights coming as well. And I think this is going to be a feature that lasts a very long time.
Absolutely, and look, fun times on the virtual hardwood is what it's all about. We have offered up some criticism of 2K22 this week. I'm sure we'll have more things to say, positive and negative, moving forward, but we will be looking to play the game. Others will too. So look, get into the forum, talk about it, positive and negative, and share your highlights, and certainly submit them for the top 10 as well. But yes, I am a little bit obsessed with throwing alley-oops in 2K14 at the moment, as you saw. But I was quite happy with the one that made the top 10. That was my favourite, that one, and had a decent one to MJ as well, from BG Armstrong to MJ. But the Kemp one was just a little bit more fire, a little bit more hang time on that one, hanging on the rim as well. But 2K14, it's been a good retro kick as well. Great retro kick along with Live 10. It's one of the two games this year that I've really come to appreciate a bit more.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I had a 4-hour, I want to say, something like that, session with Sticky Fingers today. He was wired in, and he reached out to me, and we were like, all right, well, let's play. And we played NBA 2K14, and NBA Live 16, NBA Live 18, and NBA Jam on Fire Edition. And it's just so cool to have all those options. We played all of those games off of my Xbox One using the Xbox Companion app and Parsec. And I just want to say again, if you're not on Parsec, download it. It's free. It's a free application. It's really easy to set up. You know that. You set it up in a couple minutes and put in my settings in a couple minutes. And just the opportunities are endless as far as like the games you can play and the fun that can be had and all of that stuff. And we had a great session today, and you and I have had so many good sessions with NBA Jam on Fire Edition, and we have the NBA Live tournament running through Parsec and all of that stuff. So download the app.
No, I totally agree. It's been a lot of fun to do this year. It's been a big part of our gaming this year, as we've talked about so many times on the show and shared those highlights on social media and in the forum. And I think that fun comes through, and I can't wait to play more of Live 10 with you and others, and B-Train, of course, finish up that series one way or the other. Hopefully, no hard feelings, B-Train, but I do want to win, and of course, he's a great competitor. If he does win, I will certainly doff my cap to him as well, and look forward to seeing.
Right now, P-Train's in some cabin somewhere doing pull-ups, getting ready for the next game.
Listening to Gonna Fly Now, yeah, absolutely. But need to hype yourself up listening to Till I Collapse by Eminem, as I used to listen to before I played basketball back in the day. But anyway, yeah.
You know, put on snow boots and get out there and start pulling sleds and running up a mountain and all of that stuff.
Well, first of all, finding snow in Australia is there's only one place that really does snow. But yeah, so it'll be a long run to get there. So I'll definitely be worn out by the time I get back. But it's definitely been a lot of fun and more fun to come with that. But one other thing I wanted to mention real quick is that we're looking to see if we can transfer saves from an actual PS3 for Live 10 roster saves to the emulator and back, to see if I can work on things when you're offline and send them through to you. It would be interesting to see if that works.
Yeah, I haven't tried it yet, unfortunately. I've been trying to get as much NBA 2K22 in as I can, and then obviously the Parsec sessions and everything. But I'll let you know once I try that. But because I did download what you sent me.
But that'd be really cool if we get that to work. The things we could do.
Yeah, see, the thing is, too, Parsec has that possibility as well. Even if you couldn't get that to work, the amazing thing about Parsec is that you live in Australia. No, I'm sure you were already aware of that. But
others too, yep. G'day.
Yeah, I could literally just have you connect with me on Parsec and then just go to bed, and you could mod on my computer.
Oh, yeah.
That's wild.
It is. Crazy. I guess the main thing is if we can transfer it between the emulator and consoles, and from console to console, we can then if we do create anything cool like a sandbox retro teams roster, which I'd love to make, we can then whack that up in the download section for people who want a retro game with it.
Right, that's true. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'll try to get to that this week because I think that would be cool.
Lots of fun stuff that we want to try, and not just with 2K22, but of course we will be covering that moving forward. But getting on to the mailbag now, actually put out a prompt this week, Derek. I thought we'd try something a little bit different for the mailbag. Threw out a topic for people to respond to, and that might be something we do a bit more moving forward as well. I mean, we certainly will talk about whatever's on your mind. We want to hear from you in that regard, but thinking that we'll put out some topics for the mailbag and solicit opinions, Derek.
Yeah, and you got 2 responses immediately.
I did, yes. Yes.
So, yeah, that was a good idea, and I thought it was a very good question as well.
So the question this week was asking people to reflect on some of their favorite video game launches, basketball video game launches, and some of the games that blew them away right away. Shout out to BB8 Tech Dad at BB8_Tech on Twitter. Says, for me, probably have to be NBA Jam TE, NBA Live 96, NBA Street Volume 2, either Live 2004 or 05, NBA Ballers, NBA 2K11, which is probably his number 1, and College Hoops 2K8. That is a fantastic roster of video games.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading through that, and I'm like, this guy knows basketball gaming. Like, he, he's been around for a while and, knows what it was like to get excited for all these different annual releases. And it's probably very disappointing for people like him who don't get as excited now. You know what I mean? Like, you look back on it and you think about, how you anxiously awaited. Sometimes people, waited in line for the game, or they went to like a midnight release like my brother did for NBA 2K13 and NBA 2K12, where they went to like a midnight release at GameStop and like waited in line and whatnot. So I think it's disappointing for those who don't like the direction that basketball gaming is in right now.
Doesn't have that same excitement and goodwill that some of those previous releases had, and the abbreviated preview season definitely has an impact on that, as well as the direction of gaming overall. But looking at those games, ones that I did get at launch, I did get 96 for PC a little bit later. It had been out for a while, and I kept seeing the ads on TV and begged my dad to take me to the shop so that I could buy it, which I did, and was not disappointed, except for the fact we needed to make a boot disk because it was an old 486 that we had at the time, Windows 3.1. Aging myself on that one, but Tournament Edition, of course, I'd bought from earlier, not at launch, but I do remember the launches of 2004 and 2005, NBA Live 2004 2005 very vividly, covering them for the site. Remember getting them on day one as soon as they came out here in Australia, and really enjoying them. Of course, 2K11 I also got at launch, but it took me a while to get into that because I was still making the adjustments to the the way 2K handled dribbling at the time. As I've said before, College Hoops 2K8 I've only just got in the last couple of years, but certainly appreciate that one. But I'm looking at those, some great games. Absolutely no mystery as to why those are some of the favorites, and to get at launch or after or at some point afterwards, absolutely top games there, and some of my all-time favorites in that list. I will say NBA Live 06 PC was my favorite launch, probably, Derek, because we got it early here in Australia. Someone put it out on the shelves in EB Games early, that EB Games being the Australian version of GameStop, the Australian branch of GameStop, I should say. But so I actually got it a couple of weeks early, and we made a big deal of it, and of course it never happened again because they were very careful after that. But that was probably my favorite release because Australia actually got it early for once.
I have a question for you about NBA Live 06.
Sure.
PC. How well do you feel that is aged when you put that back on? Like, when you put that on today and compare it to, let's say, titles over the last 10 years. So, like NBA 2K11 and up. How would you say that game is aged?
I think pretty well. I think pretty well. Put it this way. I mean, I do have a bias towards it because I do think it is the last great all-around great NBA Live release. I know Live 10 is that for a lot of people, but of course Live 06 had All-Star Weekend as well, and a better Dynasty mode with less issues than 10. But I put in Live 06 PC today, and I feel like modding it. It's very hard to resist the urge to mod it.
That's a good sign. If you're putting in a game and you're playing it and you're like thinking about other teams or players that you can put in or other things that you can do with it and everything, that's a damn good sign, especially with a game that's like 15 years old.
It really is. It's a game I put in there. I play that and I say I want to get the Ultimate Jordan roster done for this. I want to get some retro rosters done for this. I want to get a current roster update for this. Look, I'm not going to promise anything, but if I can ever make the time and get some assets together, look, it may not be as detailed because we have fewer people in the community working on that these days, but putting together something that's pretty comprehensive and that we can possibly put out there as something the community can update if some other retro modders come along, I would love to do it. And the other thing is that 2005 to 08 are all pretty interchangeable and very easily to convert mods between them. So if I update 08, for example, I can also update 07, 06, and 2005 pretty much simultaneously. So that's...
Well, I want to bring something up. You remember how in NBA Live 10 we said that was one of the great signs is the fact that you and I immediately were like, how cool would this be if we had like Barkley in this game?
Oh, yeah.
Or like
MJ,
Moss.
Yep.
Classic teams. That's such a great sign because there's certain games that I put on where I'm just like, I don't know if I want to play another game of this, let alone, throw together like all this time into modding and adding content to it. So yeah, that's definitely a really good sign, especially for a 15-year-old game.
So also got a response from David Panappa. Shout out to you at King Deey on Twitter. NBA Live 06 and 07 and NBA 2K7 on 360. NBA Live 09 and 10. NBA 2K11. NBA 2K14, Xbox One, some of the launches that really stick out in his mind. It says he buys 2K Day 1 every year. Hasn't been blown away by one since 2K14. I feel a lot of people, 2K14 was the year of the OMG trailer and that big jump from 7th to 8th gen. It has been very hard for 2K, as good as and great as some of those games that came after 2K14 have been, to really get that same impact, I think, for a lot of people. 2K11, of course, but again, some pretty solid games there. 2K7 on 360, I haven't played as much of. 07 on NBA Live 07 on 360 is definitely has its moments, but is also extremely rough. And 06 is a game that's kind of underrated because of its lack of depth, but gameplay-wise, it holds up very well, as I've talked about in articles and on the podcast this year. But very interesting to see some more games there, and again, some great ones, obviously, with Live 10 and 2K11 and 2K14.
Yeah, I revisited Live 06 like I talked about before, and I was pleasantly surprised of the gameplay and how just similar it was to like Live 03 and Live 04 and whatnot. And I'm talking about Live 06 for the 360. And, it was lacking in depth and everything, but from a graphics and gameplay perspective, it was pretty solid. Live 07, definitely, we both have pretty harsh thoughts on that for many valid reasons. While my brothers and I were excited when the game was released, the problem is that the release, I believe we got that one on day one. The release was so poor that we immediately switched to NBA 2K. That was the year.
2K7, yeah.
Yeah, we went to 2K for 2K7, and it's also because 2K7 allowed us to have multi-team use in a franchise or a season or whatever. And
that stuff's important. Like those little things, like, okay, that's not as important to me, but I'm not to downplay its importance, but that wouldn't be a factor in my... When I look at 07 and some of the biggest issues I had with it, that probably wouldn't register as much, but it does for you. And it is a big issue and has continued to be a big issue. And it definitely should be a thing that Live should offer and hasn't. But it just goes to show there's a lot of little things within the games with trying to appeal to everybody that if you don't kind of hit on that, the breadth of being able to have all those options and things, especially when they're in previous games, it's how you turn people off your product.
And that's where 2K got it right. That's one of the things they do right is they do give you that bevy of options. the bevy of sliders, whether they work right or not half the time, the, bevy of roster options. And yeah, sure, the rosters are not well done for the classic teams and whatnot, but they have those assets, right?
Exactly.
They're there, etc. And then they have the multi-team use and the deep My League and now My NBA mode and all of that stuff. So that's where 2K now still gets it right. Unfortunately, the on-court product can still sometimes be a mess, and that's what hurts the fun and the excitement in that regard. 2K14 was, this is the thing, okay? So I was excited for 2K14 Xbox One. In fact, I went to a mall about an hour from where I lived to like a Microsoft store, and because they had NBA 2K14 up and playable pre-launch, so they had like the like a station set up for it, and you could try it. So he did that, and I was like blown away by the graphics, and I thought it looked great and everything, and I played it there for a while. But I actually didn't pick up NBA 2K14 for Xbox One until the winter. And the reason is because I had NBA 2K14, I want to say, for the PC at the time, and I was happy with that. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
So I want to say that's the order of things, but I didn't pick that up on launch day, but I did play it at that station.
At the launch, around launch, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I got my PS4 on a midnight launch here in Australia, JB Hi-Fi, and got Live 14, 2K14, and what was the other one? Oh, Killzone? Shadowfall? Something like that? Whatever it was. That series, I didn't particularly care for that one. I traded that in for the PS4 port of Injustice. Yeah, and as again, 2K14 is a game that I've come to appreciate more over the years, especially this year. Live 14, never really quite warmed up to that the same way. I gave it a good try playing it when it was new, but these days I do find it very difficult to go back to. And to that point, shout out to DZulu, Devo Khan on Twitter, has mentioned that he's been enjoying 2K14 for the past week. You could actually do the moves you wanted to do. Yeah, I certainly agree with him on that one. And again, I am obsessed with throwing alley-oops whenever I play 2K14 at the moment, especially if I do play with a retro team like the 96 Sonics.
Yeah, I think NBA 2K14 ages very well from a gameplay perspective. It's really frustrating sometimes trying to play on the same team with somebody on that game, and we tried that today with me and Sticky Fingers. Unfortunately, I put us against the 1985-86 Celtics, and that wasn't very smart on my part. But it's frustrating because the icons are so similar for 1 and 2 players, so we didn't know who we were being, and neither one of us player locked, and there's still some issues in that game as far as like that gravitational pull to like other players and everything. So it got a little bit frustrating at times. We still made the best of it and had some fun. Playing against the computer on NBA 2K14 as a solo player, I think, is very enjoyable, and I think playing against another human, both using your own team, I think that's also very enjoyable on that game. Unfortunately, the depth in that game killed it for my two brothers because we all couldn't play a season together because they didn't have multi-team use in that specific game.
I felt some of that when we tried to play with and against each other over the companion app, the Xbox companion app and Parsec, apart from the input lag from my end, which is a result of where I am in the world, obviously. There is some confusion when you're trying to play on the same team without being player locked. That may have been, if we were mic'd up or on the couch together, might not have been as much of an issue. But trying to work it out is not as easy when you got the 5 players to switch between. One person's player locked and the other person's switching, as opposed to a 2-on-2 with Jam on Fire Edition. But either way, it was worth a try, and it is a very fun game to play against the CPU. So Derek, as far as our favorite launches go, I've already mentioned 06 PC for mine because, of course, we got it early. But again, the game was such a fantastic product as well. Great all-around NBA Live game, one of the best all-around games in the NBA Live series, and a step up on Live 2005 in some ways, which itself was a fantastic game. It in 2004 are definitely up there for me as well. I think it's kind of the two big ones for me. 2K17 was a great one as well because it got straight into my career and the pretty much night one getting the 2K Pro-Am with the guys, and that was a lot of fun as well. I'll mention NBA Live 10 as well because that was a fun one to cover in the previous season, even though we did miss out on a few exclusives that we were promised. I've mentioned that before. Probably won't get into that here. Maybe get into that another time. But those are probably the three or four that really stand out in my memory. Live 2004, 05, and 06, a really strong second golden age for NBA Live, and really love those launches, and they stick out in my memory. 2K11 was special, of course, because of all the lead up with the Jordan Challenge. Live 10, 2K17, 2K14 was pretty special as well with the OMG trailer and some of the coverage we were doing. So yeah, those would definitely stand out in my mind.
Yeah, interesting you didn't mention 2K13 because of the right stick dribbling.
Actually, yeah, no, that I stand corrected. I can't believe I forgot about that. 2K13 would be there for me as well.
Yeah, I think for me, I have to go way back, and I mean way back. My excitement for knowing that we were going to get Sega CD and the NBA Jam on Sega CD was through the roof. I can't even tell you. Now, I know we're talking about day one or launch day stuff, but I mean, we didn't get that on like launch day. But we got the Sega CD very shortly after it came out, and we got NBA Jam. And sure, the graphics port. I was very young at the time. I want to say, hell, 9 years old, maybe 8, 9, something like that. I can't remember. And we had the Jam box, like the cover and everything, and the case it came into just looked amazing to me. You put it on and you have that new amazing startup menu music, and it's just going through the rosters and playing the game and everything. And our parents thought that the graphics were too good and they were going to fry the TV, so we could only play for like a half hour. And then we'd have to shut off.
Graphics so good it'll burn out your TV. Yeah, now there's a marketing slogan for you.
Yeah, that they really thought that they were having us shut it off. But my excitement for that game was unreal. NBA Live 96 was a big thing for us, and we had it for Sega Genesis, actually, not for PC or PlayStation or anything. So we got that, and we were able to go into Create a Player, and if you type in like Michael Jordan, it's 6'6", 198 pounds. It's actually Michael Jordan. And you type in Wilt Chamberlain, and hey, look, it's Wilt Chamberlain in the Create a Player. So we were able to, that was the first game that we ever played Legends on, actually, was NBA Live 96. And we continue that tradition to today. So that's crazy. 25 years of playing Legends on video games, where my brothers and I, my brother Nick and I put together, and we did that tonight. See, that's what's crazy. 25 years of this. We put together the best players to ever play the game on one team, and we take on regular NBA teams, and it's fun. I mean, you accumulate stats, and it's just a good time. NBA Fast Break 98 was a huge thing for us. It was a Christmas gift, and we got it when we got the PlayStation. And so, imagine unwrapping the PlayStation and then unwrapping NBA Fast Break 98. Our eyes were popping out of our head. We were so excited. And then we got it on the screen, and the graphics looked like real life to us. And we kept talking about how it looked so real and all of that stuff. And you think that's funny, but back then,
sure,
going from NBA Live 96 to NBA, on Sega Genesis to NBA Fast Break 98, that's a big jump. So, we kept booting up exhibition games and playing it over and over again and going through the rosters and loving the music, because the music on that game is so underrated. And so that was a big one for us. NBA Live 2000 for the PC was another huge one, and the NBA 2K for Dreamcast, the original one. Both of those were huge. We got those right away, and the amount of time we spent with both of those is unreal. Let's see, NBA Live 98 was a big one for us for PC. That was the first PC basketball video game that I believe we got into, and it was awesome, and it was amazing. And you know how awesome NBA Live 98 was?
Oh, yeah?
It was great for modding. The gameplay was fun, all of that stuff. We just couldn't believe how deep the game was and whatnot. Let's see.
I was going to say, I will jump in and say that as far as games that I didn't get at launch, but sometime afterwards when they were still relatively new, Live 96 PC, of course, and I had that same. You don't actually have they had to take out the Legends, unlockable Legends, because the NBA wasn't too happy about it from the 16-bit version. But of course, they did have Creator Player where you could still create them. Then, of course, I found this site called the NBA Live Series Center that made these PC editors that maybe I was able to actually give my creator Michael Jordan all his drafted information, etc., which was really cool. So, and that is the Live 96 PC is the game that drew me to find the NBA Live Series Center, and which had already been founded by Tim Lutz and Brian. So that's always very. I love the game for itself, but also for my history with the community as well. I love 96 PC and 2000 PC franchise mode, the Legends, Michael Jordan in the game again, and that's so the great gameplay that it had for its time. And the presentation, absolutely agree. So, and 2003 as well. It's one of those things where, and I did get that around about launch, and I'm nostalgic for that in 2002. I mean, yeah, I suppose there's a lot of games that stand out from that era for me, but some of them I did play a little bit later. So if we're just talking about launches, that's that first group I mentioned.
I know. I just can't help but talk about the other ones, even if I didn't get them right at launch.
Yeah.
Because they were so exciting when we got them. Live 2000, Live 2001, Live 2002, Live 2003, and Live 2004 were all big for us. Like, huge. Like, getting those games and the amount of time we spent on them was astronomical. NBA Street Volume 2 was a big release for us as well. I'll try to cut this short. Let's see. NBA 2K.
Tournament Edition for PC as well, for me. Tournament Edition PC.
Oh, there you go. And that's aged well.
Oh, it has, yeah.
It really has.
That version, yeah.
Gameplay.
All versions of the original NBA Jam. Arcade.
They really have.
Super Nintendo, Genesis, PC, PlayStation. Yeah.
It was fun.
Great game.
It was really fun.
Epic.
As far as some of the newer games go, NBA 2K11 was obviously a big deal because, like you said, Jordan was back in the game and whatnot. NBA 2K12, NBA 2K13, NBA 2K14 for PC were big deals. NBA 2K16 and NBA 2K17 were huge deals on launch for us. 2K16 we were disappointed with right away, and then they patched it and fixed some of the issues that we had. NBA 2K17 got it, obviously, day one. Super anticipated. We're really excited about it. A lot of anticipation. We loved it right away. Like, I put it on, and I texted my brother who was at work, and I said, they fixed everything that we, had for issues in 2K16, and we were just blown away by how fun the game was out of the box, and it's still the best experience we've had on launch. It's the best launch day experience that we've had on last gen and this next gen. So, and I think you can agree with that.
Yeah,
this is a strong
2K17, absolutely.
And that's the last game that we were really excited about because 2K18 bummed us out.
I was gonna say not 2K18, but yes, thank you, Be Fresh. But those are ours. Thank you for sharing yours with the in the mailbag. Definitely keep that conversation going in the forums on social media. Love to hear more people's input on that. But once again, thank you for getting back to us on that mailbag prompt. We will be putting up some more prompts in the weeks to come. But of course, feel free to hit us up with your questions and topic suggestions that come to mind as well. Podcast at nba-live.com in the forum, or of course via social media, which we'll be promoting shortly. But yes, that has brought us to the end of this week's episode number 392 of the NLSC podcast. The podcast comes out every Sunday on the NLSC, which is nba-live.com, of course. We're also on all the major podcatching apps and platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, just to name a few. On those platforms, search for NLC Podcast, look for our logo, and that will be us. And as always, feel free to leave us a hopefully positive review on Apple Podcasts. And since we are saying goodbye to our listeners for another week, Derek, where can they connect with you, and any other final words for this episode?
Well, for our listeners, again, thanks for always supporting the show and listening every week. And at the same time, I really appreciate the people that have been connecting with me on Parsec and have been interested in the tournaments that we're running and those participating in the NBA Live 10 tournament and those submitting the highlights for the top 10 plays of the week and those who are interacting with that. It's really appreciated, and I really enjoy putting that video content together as well. So keep submitting those highlights. As far as holding court with D for 3, I've actually had a couple of people asking me about it, either through DM and then on a couple of my Twitter posts asking if it's going to be continued and whatnot. So I think we're due for recording a couple episodes at the end of this month and getting those out there for those people. So that'll be fun. So tune in to Holding Court with D for 3 on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, Amazon Audible. as well as CLNS Media. You can find me on Twitter at D4 384, where I'm the most active. At D4 3G is a new gaming channel that I started that I post a lot of game highlights on, as you know, from various Parsec sessions and sessions with my brothers and whatnot, and me playing against the CPU on all different games. So, if you don't follow that handle, definitely follow it. I'm also on the NLSC as a team member, D4 and on YouTube as well, D4
Of course, if you'd like to get in touch with me, I am Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. Please connect with the NLSC on social media if you haven't already. We're on Twitter and Facebook at the NLSC. Our Instagram is NLSC Basketball. You can check out our video content at youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. And of course, keep it locked to the NLSC itself, nba-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. But yes, that's all for this week, so thank you once again for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.